Also, Ms. Pearson?
Present.
Mr. Schubert?
Here.
Ms. McCall?
Present.
Ms. Bennett?
Present.
Ms. Bender?
Present.
Ms. Haley?
Here.
Ms. Stanford?
Here.
With 7 present, we have a quorum.
We will now take a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we start each board meeting, it bears reminding that the mission of Rockford Public Schools is collaboratively engaged all students in an equitable first-class education for a changing world. Before going any further, special thanks to Kim Pedersen, who is working behind the scenes to produce the board's broadcast via YouTube live stream and Comcast Channel 20. I also wish to welcome Superintendent's Student Advisory Council Representative, Cecilia Fumo from Auburn High School. Welcome. Are there any changes, corrections, or additions to the meeting minutes? If
It says July 11th on the meeting minutes. I think it's State. Is that correct?
our last date of the last date of Committee of the Whole, Ms. Fromm, will you please confirm?
I think the wrong ones are posted. I'll correct those.
Thank you. Other than the correction needed, are there any other? If not, will you show a consensus by thumbs up or a nod? Thank you. Ms. Stanford will now lead Stakeholders Committee portion of the meeting.
I don't have the clicker, so bear with me. Okay.
Do keep in mind there may be a slight delay in the slides.
But she can hear me, right?
She can.
Okay. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, as usual, we begin by showing our committee's 12-month agenda. Our feature presentation for September will be the Affinity Listening Sessions with Dr. Antoine Reed. But first, let's begin by celebrating the good things happening in our district. Next. We're all excited to be celebrating going back to school. Our district has a variety of events across the district to celebrate. Friday, August 21st, the administration building held their annual back to school barbecue. This is an opportunity for all the people in the building and surrounding departments to eat, win prizes, and enjoy their fellow employees' company. This includes our operations team and bus drivers. Tuesday, August 29th was full of back to school nights, welcoming students and families into a new school year. These schools included Froburg, Conklin, and Cherry Valley. Next. Our top item this past week in the 205 Vibe was back to school 2023-24 start and dismissal times. As you can see, lots of families engaged with this important, important news. Sorry. Our featured blog post this month is Bridge from Home to Classroom. The Prenatal to 3 Preventative Initiative Program hosted a transition celebration for the children on their way to preschool. This event is a celebration of the families who put in the hard work preparing their children for preschool. Find out more at 205 Vibe. Next, legislative news. Dr. Miguel Cardona, U.S. Secretary of Education, will be visiting Bayer Early Childhood Center on September 7th at 10:30 a.m. He'll be joined by Congressman Eric Sorensen and National Education Association President Becky Pringle. They will give remarks, tour classrooms, talk with parents, students, teachers, and staff. Next. Parent liaison training ran from August 9th through the 11th. They received training on how to better use Panorama, MTSS, eSchool, and DEI. There are a variety of speakers to help them better understand working with students and families. These speakers included Antoine Harris, MTSS Panorama Amy Gannon and the MTSS team, DEI Faniqua Hughes and Dr. Reed, eSchool Joyce Budlong and Kelly Smith. August 17th, 18th, and 21st, all new teachers attended a required 3-day new teacher orientation. On August 17th, teachers had several engaging sessions to help acquaint them with RPS and learned about RPS's equity imperative, multi-tiered systems of support, and were able to experiment and play with educational technology. On August 18th, teachers learned about curriculum, implementation, and resources at RPS, team referral requests for students, the RPS evaluation process for certified employees, employee benefits, and the new teacher mentor program. August 21st was held at the IBEW Local Union 364, where teachers spent the morning with the union, and then teachers got to spend the afternoon in their school buildings with their principals preparing for the upcoming year. Next. Now we'll hear from Dr. Reed about how CPI training has been going, which will include a short video about our CPI training efforts.
Wow, the video is loading, I think.
There we go. No?
Nope.
No.
Well, I can quickly talk about CPI. I just want to thank our board, Dr. Jarrett, our cabinet, for the leadership that we put forth to get this done. To be in compliance with the state, you have to have the mandated training that you do at Tier 1 when you have to do various things in our schools. We have done something that has not been done. Many large districts cannot get the training done. They are reaching out to us about how we did it with other school districts that are a little larger, because we were able to get the training done with every student-facing position in our district. We have one piece left, that is the lunch staff. They will be trained within the next month. Other than that, we're about 85% of our staff is trained that will be in front of our scholars. So I do want to thank people that got this done. Ms. Phipps, our executive assistant, she was really phenomenal in getting this taken care of for us. Transportation, their entire bus staff is trained now. They had a phenomenal training over at the transportation department. Jason, if it wasn't for Mr. Bethel, we wouldn't have got this done. He had to rebuild out the entire platform. I want to thank Public School Works, Talent Development. It was many personnel that came to play to get our entire district trained on CPI. The training was phenomenal. More than the training, it was the energy about the training. It showed me that when you have a collective team with the right energy, you can get things done. As you can see that picture on the wall, this is the last day of training, and trainings are usually not the most fun, but on the last day, the trainings were so serious, I almost called 911 because I thought it was a serious thing going on, but they were just doing training. I had to catch myself. The parents downstairs were enthused to see our staff up there having fun, and that's Heather's quadrant right there. I had to shout her out, but they were really engaged, all 4 quadrants during the training. We have a cabinet member trained, Mr. Earl Dotson. He always has to get in there. He's trained. He was with our principals who got certified. So it was a really fun thing to see our entire district trained on CPI. So I would hope the video would play. If not, I'll pass it back to you, Chona.
Okay, I assume we're not going to get the video.
All right.
So we'll move on. Grow Your Own Illinois Diverse Male Teacher Initiative is a 50-seat statewide cohort aimed at increasing the number of men of color entering into the teaching field within the community they serve. School districts must be invited to participate in the program. And as a result of the success RPS 205 has sustained around implementing Grow Your Own Teacher Pathways, we have been extended 10 seats in the statewide cohort. In August, 10 RPS employees started their journey at Rock Valley College to become certified teachers with RPS. This includes Jose Harris from Auburn, Julian Bonner from Auburn, Dominique Marshall from Guilford, Alex Rodriguez from Hillman, Senta Rockwood at Jefferson, Virgil Hobson at Kennedy, Jared Noling at Kennedy, Jesus Maldonado at Risa, Devontae Williams at West, and Jeremy Coleman at Westview. Each of these men have been doing transformational work with students in their current roles, and we're excited to support their transition into certified teaching positions where their impact can be magnified even further. Next, we're going to hand it back over to Dr. Reed for our feature presentation on affinity listening sessions.
Thank you so much, Joan. So I just want to update us on where we are and what we should expect here. It's really important that we are familiar with the week of September 11th through the 15th. So the focus of this, due to Dr. Jarrett's leadership in our cabinet, was to make sure that our decisions included our families. We believe that if our families are engaged and our scholars belong, that we should see our attendance increase and our scholars should want to be in our buildings on a daily basis. So we want our families and scholars to be heard and have a voice in the decision making. So starting the year, every school will have 3 representatives to make sure that the parents are getting information. Every school should have at least 5 parents. Some schools have up to 25. Every school should have a scholar represented at every grade level, 5th grade through 12th, and they will be represented throughout 6 events throughout the school year. These scholars will be able to talk about their lived experience in our buildings. We don't have to listen to external partners. We do care about external partners that don't have representation in our school, but it's really important that when we show up, we listen to the scholars that are in our buildings, and we listen to the parents that send our scholars to school. We learned a lot over the last few weeks when Dr. Jarrett pushed this out and made sure we got it done. The parents were ready to talk. Just a really quick thing that happened. I want to thank Maureen Kirschman. A lot of families reached out 2 weeks ago to say, hey, look, our scholars are not coming to school on the first day without proper school clothes, and their hair did. Quickly, Maureen Kirschman and her team made sure that they had things in place with the parent liaisons to get these families. I have a parent that was texting me just earlier. We were dropping off bags to her. She has clothes to start school. Simple things like that, our families were not going to show up if they didn't feel that we were listening to them. So due to our leadership, we now have things in place to listen to our families and our scholars, and we can make better informed decisions on what they actually need, not what we think they need. So we need to know what they really need to be able to respond in the right way. So just really quickly, we have our quadrant model set up. Our families on September 11th will engage in understanding what we're doing with math, and we will be able to talk back about, hey, what do you want to see in math? Here are some tools at home. That would be led by Heidi Detman and her team. That would also take place Tuesday when they will learn about literacy and numeracy the second day. Jason will talk about technology. Mike will be able to talk about transportation. Wednesday, we have Maureen Kirschman, who will talk about things that we have in the community, as well as Matt Zedeker to talk about opportunities. We would then go to Thursday talking about MTSS. These will all take place virtual. We'll talk about behavior management, more to student leadership, and we'll talk about school attendance. I think Dr. Jarrett made it clear our number one focus is to get our scholars in the building. And we have a lot of tools in place, and I think we're going to hit that home with a new initiative that we're rolling out. We'll have that conversation during those virtual calls that night. Friday, though, is a very important day. I hope some of the board members, you guys can step out for me. I really would appreciate it. Friday from 4:30 to 6 o'clock, we will be at our quadrant locations to pass out shirts, give our parents prizes, talk to them about why we enjoy them being a part of our community voice team. It will be held at each of our 4 high schools. We will get Roosevelt in there down the road. I don't have them as at the first set of meetings, but East High School will be the southwest quadrant. Blake's quadrant. He's the school lead there. Their color is green, so if you would like to show up, we would love to see you there. You can help us pass out the shirts, and the families want to talk to the board members, so they would love to see you all there. Jefferson High School will be quadrant 2, where we have Heather's. Her color is purple. They'll love to see you all there as well. Guilford, I haven't told Dr. Jared and others that, that I would like to see them there. I think they have scholars that may be there. Anybody on the cabinet with a scholar has to show up there to make sure they get their gear, because they represent our district on another level by being a parent as well. So I would love to see, some representation there. And finally, Auburn, quadrant 4. Our awesome brother Morgan is leading that quadrant right now with a team effort there. Their color is orange. These parents just want to say hi, get the shirts and see that they belong. The first day of school, we begin to get our community to show up for us. West, Lemon, I saw Morgan at every school. He was just running around. But we had our community at each of the schools just cheering our scholars on the first day. We stopped the conversation about what we didn't do, and we talked about what we can do together for the first time. It was good to see all the other community members. We had about 12 different organizations sign up, show up at various schools, and just cheer our scholars on for the first day. And the conversation began to change to a more positive outlook, because this is what it's about, cheering the scholars on. So when our conversation with these affinity spaces get back to the reason we all do the work, our scholars, we tend to get rid of our egos and our past and some of the things that we may not have won with, and we begin to pick up where we can win moving forward. So our community has joined us with an effort to make sure our scholars are coming to school on a daily basis, that they have tools that they need, and we're going to bring them to our 6 spaces that we are having throughout the year. So that is where we are right now. So I'm looking forward to September 11th through the 15th. We will have 5 other touch points. There will be 2 more touch points that are in person, where our scholars will come in person to talk about some of the things that they're doing in our schools, positive, and some of the things they want to see done. We'll have another virtual touch point, and we'll have an end of the year celebration where our quadrants will kind of compete and show camaraderie against each other and have a little fun. The parents will kind of lead that. We have some strong parents on this group of 265 parents. We have some really strong parents that want to do some things and get involved in our commitment to serve our scholars. So that's where we are. Anybody has any questions, I'm going to pass it back to Ms. Jones.
I have a couple questions.
Yes, ma'am.
The first 4 days, all of those meetings are virtual, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. The first 4 days are virtual touch points. We have a presentation we're going to share with our families those first 4 days.
And it's for only the parents that are signed up in the affinity groups, is that correct?
Yes, well, anybody can sign up, but definitely those parents are the ones that get the information and there to give it to other parents. We want as many parents we can. That group of parents that have the information usually are going to disseminate it, but you're correct.
So how do the other parents that are not in that group know about these?
We're working with Earl's team to make sure proper communication goes out to our families, and we have proper flyers that represent each quadrant. Each quadrant, they didn't want a blast email, they want an email and a flyer based on their quadrant. So we had a blanket one. They said, no, we want it with our colors, and we want it to look like our quadrant. So we are working on that now.
Okay. And then on Friday, from 4:30 to 6, where we're handing out the shirts, how can board members, how do we go about signing up for what school we're going to be at?
Yep. So I was going to touch base with you guys to see where you wanted to go. The schools are already ready. We met with the principals just to make sure we have a location and space for you all. I kind of assumed, I think I talked to many of you guys about the possibilities. I didn't get it confirmed. So I'll work on making sure I know where you guys will possibly show up so the principal can expect you guys. We have some bags we're picking up tomorrow so you guys can pass them out. I think it'll be a real cool conversation with our families.
So we can just let you know if we're interested.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else have any questions?
What color is Guilford's quadrant?
Guilford is, they're definitely blue.
I got to keep their blue.
Yes, they keep their blue.
I just need clarity. So you mentioned, so it's Friday, not Thursday.
Yes, ma'am. The last day of the virtual one will be Thursday, and then Friday is the one in person. We want to do it right before the football game so they have a window that they can show up when they get off work, to show up between that window from 4 to 6:30 to pick up their shirts, their bags, and things of that nature.
So it's 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I wrote 4:30 to 6.
Yes, 4:30 to 6. You're correct, 6.
Okay, that's what I originally had. Thank you.
They told me to shut it off. I think the Friday night games, they got to get to those.
Anyone else have any questions?
What time were the virtual sessions during the week?
So it'll be a consistent cadence with the virtual session. When we meet with scholars, it'll usually take place between the times of 1 to 2, but all parents meetings will take place between 5:30 and 6:30. Any parents that are not available, though, we're going to have a backup session that we're going to do for the morning parents that as we see parents can't get to those evenings, we're going to try to find another space after we talk to the families about what's another morning space that's conducive for those that can't come between 5:30 and 6:30.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stanford.
We're not done. We're not done.
My apologies. Thank
That's
you.
okay. Next slide, please. Okay, community partnerships. The Summer Bash is an annual community event that supports RU Pathway students. This is a partnership between Master Builders Masonic Lodge 33 and the Jarrett family. This collaboration started in 2015 to help raise funds to subsidize the first-year tuition for selected RU Pathway students. The DEI department selects the students to be eligible for receiving the funds. To date, this partnership has awarded approximately $20,000 to over 15 students. Next. Dr. Jarrett presented a school update on the future strategic goals for Rockford Public Schools. Dr. Jarrett shared plans on how we are addressing chronic absenteeism by discussing what the school role, the community's role, and the family's role will be in addressing this issue. Dr. Jarrett was part of a presentation group that included Rockford Police Department Chief Carla Red and Transform Rockford Director Wally Haas. Next. We finish our deck with the board calendar, reminding board members of the many opportunities available to interact with our students, families, and community each month. Please make sure you check the calendar on a regular basis for the most up-to-date information. Next. And now we'd like to offer an opportunity for board members to share any interactions you've had with our stakeholders recently. Anybody? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say the kickoffs that were held at the various schools were very exciting and very made you feel like it's going to be a really great school year. I had the opportunity to attend Conklin's back to school kickoff and help pass out t-shirts and things like that, and interact with the students and the parents, and they seemed like they were very excited to get this school year started. I think that was it so far over the past couple of weeks. I can't wait to be at Auburn on Friday in my orange.
Excuse me.
You can come too. We can have more than one, right?
Yes, because we have 7 board members in 4 high schools.
Right, and I don't even have high
So there's
school in
going to
my
have
thing.
to be overlap.
And class of 97, huh? But they'll actually be there this Friday at Auburn. And I'm just excited. The interactions that I had with the parents, they were very understanding of the issues that we had as far as the moving the time for the buses and the start date. So my interactions were positive over the past couple of weeks, and I look forward to getting into more schools. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, I want to first apologize to Mr. Ryan at Auburn. It was my intention to be there the first day of school, but due to family circumstances, I was not able to attend, and the services for my sister is on Friday, so there may be a barrier there as well. So I will be between Auburn and East. So.
Anyone else? Okay, we just have one more thing. You can go to the next slide. Please review the proposed board retreat agenda. We've provided you with a copy on board docs. Let us know if you have any questions or feedback. Did anyone, if you had a chance to read through it, did you have any feedback for us? Okay, that concludes our report.
Now, thank you, Ms. Stanford. Now we will hear from Mr. Carpenter that will lead us into the Performance and Monitoring Committee portion of the meeting.
Thank you. There are no formal reports for tonight's Performance Monitoring Committee. However, we do have a substantial list of consent agenda items. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the consent agenda items?
I do. I just had questions about the neuro restorative. Am I in the right place? I'm sorry, I lost my spot. Yep. Oh, yeah. The neuro restorative school. The purpose of this program, as I understand, is for students who have been placed in an alternative learning environment, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's to kind of, and they're special education or have an IEP. This program is to track their progress and to hopefully get them back to their home school. Is that correct?
There are grants through the state of Illinois, through ISB, for families to apply, and this was a grant that a family was awarded, and the grant provides residential compensation to the parent, reimbursement to the parent, and we provide the educational portion.
Okay.
So this is a state grant funded opportunity.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? I'm seeing none. Looking ahead at the September 19th Superintendent's Report, the administration will update the board on the Tier 3 academic return on investment studies. This concludes the business of the Performance Monitoring Committee tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. We will now hear from Vice President Ms. McCall, who will lead the Planning and Development Committee portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome.
We're going to start with A, resolution to adopt the 2023-2024 budget. Dr. Brown, Chief Financial Officer, will now give an update on the FY24 tentative budget.
Okay, thank you. So we went through a pretty lengthy presentation at the August meeting, and what we did in heading F, assessing the situation, is really just give you an update on the only things that changed from the last time that we went through the big presentation. So I'll just highlight the changes that we've made. Other than that, everything is exactly as we talked about last month. So we did for Fund 80, which again is a reminder of the tort fund, we did add an additional $360,000 for the increase in the school resource officer services. As you might recall, we talked about that had been frozen for more than 10 years at $1 million. And when they had a chance to reassess what their costs were, it came in at, $1,360,000. And so that's a combination of their cost of $1,360,000 and the $300,000 for overtime that we originally had budgeted. So we had $1.3 million budgeted originally. The cost now we're projecting is $1.66. So we did have an increase of $360,000 for that. The next one is also in addition to Fund 80, the tort fund, and this is for the mentors. We're still working on that agreement right now, but we do know we have a max cost of up to $150,000 for that service. So we've gone ahead and budgeted for that, even though we're probably not going to spend that amount of money because it's not going to start right away. until we actually get approval on that. But we have at least included money in the budget for those services as well. And then we had a bit of a flip-flop on the revenue side, and this is all within, Fund 10, which is the education fund. So the evidence-based funding that we were expecting to get, which was around $7.3 million, actually came in quite a bit less than that at $2.92 million. And the reason that it came in less than that is we actually moved from Tier 1, which is, kind of the lowest level of adequacy and funding for districts in the state of Illinois, to Tier 2. And that was because of the fact that we've been getting so much corporate personal property replacement tax money. So the CPPRT money is considered to be a local source of revenue. And so it makes the district with these one-time monies look much wealthier than the district really is, based on like the property taxes that we get and things like that. So because of that, we actually shifted into Tier 2, which meant that we got a smaller share of kind of that tiered funding that we would get. And so we expect that to last actually into next year as well, because the receipts have been, so large again for this last year as well on the CPPRT money. So, while the CPPRT money is nice, it's one-time money and it's not something you can count on to come back every single year like the evidence-based funding that we get regularly every single year. So that was kind of a hiccup in the budget. The good news is the estimate that the state gave us for the corporate personal property replacement tax money for this coming school year actually offset that. And so we're even as far as total revenue, but it was really kind of a revenue shift we really didn't like. We would have much rather have it in the evidence-based funding rather than getting it in the CPPRT. So that's just kind of a heads up, and we think that there's going to be an impact on this going into next year as well, as far as the way the funding is going to work out. So that's really it on the changes. So any questions on that? Net is, we ended up adding, $360,000, for the police contract, $150,000 for the mentor contract, and then revenue stayed the same, even though, the source of it kind of flip-flopped. So overall, we're going to be just a little bit higher on the budget by about $510,000. So questions on that?
I'll reserve my questions for off.
Sounds good.
Mr. Carpenter?
Thank you. Is there a document that was attached that laid out what you were just explained, or I missed it?
Really the write-up there is that the narrative down below. If you click on the FY24 budget narrative, where it says final 8-15-23, that goes into a little bit more detail than the synopsis that we've got here. So there is a bigger explanation on that too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions?
I have one.
Bradford?
If the CPPRT is estimated at $7 million this year, is that going to affect our evidence-based funding for next year?
Yes, it will.
And if our CPPRT is not that high next year, we're going to have a problem, right?
If our CPPRT isn't that high next year, hopefully we'll get more in evidence-based funding. It's
So they reevaluate?
They do every year.
Okay.
Yep. They go back and look at it every single year.
Okay.
But they look at it kind of strange because they look at the CPPRT money on a calendar year basis versus a fiscal year basis, which is why we're a little bit askew on it and why we think it's going to affect next year as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. The FY24 budget will be brought to the board for approval at the September 19th board meeting. We're going to go ahead to item B, PCI Farmer Services Enterprise Zone Tax Abatement. Excuse me. Next is a request from PCI Farmer Services for a tax abatement. PCI Farmer Services, formerly Anderson Packaging, has requested a 9-year tax abatement for a new project under construction on Linden Road, the southeast corner of Alpine and US 20. The construction on the new facility has already begun. Therefore, the project is not contingent upon the requested abatement. Additional details are outlined in the executive summary. Administration is not making a recommendation one way or another Rather, administration is seeking consensus from the board as to whether or not the board wants to move this item forward to the September 23rd, 2023 board meeting for a vote. Are there any questions? If so, we're going to direct them to Dr. Brown.
Yes, I have a question. So if the administration is not making a recommendation one way or the other, is it necessary to be on the agenda for a vote?
It would be, yeah, because the individual.
I'm getting a conflict of response.
If you don't have a consensus to move forward with the motion or for the vote on this, then it would not be on the next agenda. There would be no reason to put it on if there isn't a consensus of the board to want to move forward with it. So it's really a discussion as to whether or not you want to grant the requested abatement, or if there's a consensus to move forward with this to the next agenda, then it would be placed on the agenda for a vote. But tonight it's really just trying to gauge whether or not the board as a whole has an interest in approving such abatement.
So, Mr. Brown, for the purpose of public knowledge, can you elaborate a little more on the advantages and disadvantages of bringing it forward or not?
Sure. I'll take one step back on why you're even seeing this. Okay. So the reason that it's come before the board is this property lies within the enterprise zone, and so there's special tax benefits that go along with property that's within the enterprise zone. But the people that are seeking the abatement, in this case PCI, actually has to go to the individual taxing bodies to be able to request the abatement. So the city can't just carte blanche give a tax abatement on behalf of all the other taxing bodies. They can only do it for themselves. And so that's the reason that it's come here for you guys to consider, is they have to do it taxing body by taxing body. And so they've chosen to ask the city, which has already granted it, the Park District, which has granted it, the county, which has decided that they're not going to do a tax abatement, but they're going to do off-site infrastructure improvements up to $300,000, which is about what they would given up on the tax on the property taxes. And then we're the last public body that they've requested the abatement through, and so that's why it's coming here for you today. So the land prior to this was agricultural land, and we were not getting hardly anything in real estate taxes on it. So we do get incremental taxes on this property over time. And so initially, if you would grant the request, the way the abatement works is there would be no real estate taxes paid by PCI for the first 3 years of the agreement. So they basically would just abate the taxes on the new property. And so the next 3 years would be a 75% reduction, meaning we would get 25% in those next 3 years. And then the last 3 years, we would get 50%, and they would get 50% of the abatement. And then after that time, we would get 100% of the taxes that are generated by the property. So that's really what they're looking for, on this request.
So the new property is really what's at question, because we haven't received any from the previous property.
That's correct. I think we were getting about $16 an acre a year.
So
it's basically a request for us to not collect taxes for a certain period of time once the property is fully developed.
So the only concern I have with that is public education is paid, one of the contributions is taxes, correct?
Correct.
And when I think of those at poverty level, even if it's $16, that can make a difference
Yeah,
in a very small way, but
Madam President, if I may.
please do.
Typically, these requests come before the project starts.
Correct.
In which case, then we're helping to spur the economic development.
Yep.
In this case, it came after
Yes.
the project has already started in the broken ground. So, so the economic development portion of it as to why many taxing bodies grant these requests is not really at issue. So it becomes a question as to whether or not you're going to encourage other taxing bodies to do similar developments or, and so there, that same kind of desire to help out and spur that economic development is not there, but it may have some long-lasting effects. And that's why we're not making a specific, administration is not making a specific recommendation, because it really then becomes more of a policy issue rather than an economic issue.
So I guess I would be interested in hearing the input from other board members and their opinion, and whether we move this to the agenda or not.
Mr. Carpenter?
The abatement as proposed would be giving up $8.4 million in taxes over 9 years. Is that right?
Yes, if we did 100%.
Oh, is that?
The abatement would be approximately 6.3 million over 9 years, and the district would receive 2.1 over 9. If it was, granted as is. The project is estimated to generate a total of 8.4 million, but under the requested scenario, they would get an abatement of 6.3 million, and the school district would get taxes of 2.1 million.
Okay, so the district would be giving up 6.3 million.
Correct.
By agreeing to the abatement as proposed.
That's correct.
Over
If you
9
did
years.
100%, or if you did the abatement as requested, the district would give up 6.3 million.
And as everybody said, that the project's already started. It's going to happen whether or not we give up $6.3 million. So
Excuse me.
my thought is that I would not be interested in advancing this.
So you're giving up the 6.3 million initially, but after the 9th year, then we will receive 100%. What is that amount?
About $933,000 a year.
So it'll be continual. So will that amount automatically come even if we don't move forward with the abatement? We will still get that?
Yep. Yeah. So, once the abatement period would be up, then there is no way to extend the abatement period. So then it would generate the projected revenue.
Any other questions?
And currently, the school
Ms. Haley?
district only gets tax revenue from new construction.
Yes, and that's going to be something you guys are going to have to decide here when we get ready to do the levy. So when we talk about, the levy here in the October meeting, previous boards have chosen not to take the taxes on new property. So, if that's something, if that's something, that you guys would choose to continue to do, we wouldn't get the taxes in the first year anyway. So, that's something that we're going to have a lot more discussion on the way we approach real estate taxes going forward. So that's something to keep in mind too, is whether we're going to take, the property taxes on new property, whether we're going to take CPI, and those are going to be some of the things we're going to be talking about going forward. So, the previous boards have had a complete freeze on taking even on new property, which then just kind of spreads the tax burden around all the other people in that first year. So basically new property was kind of like getting a break,
Okay, so I'm not in support of moving forward. We still got to hear from other board members.
Ms. Stanford?
So I would normally be the one to say, oh, we should support them and be glad that they're bringing 150 jobs to Rockford, but $6.3 million is a lot of money. So I'm having a hard time saying that we shouldn't collect that. So I would agree that we should not grant the abatement.
Ms. Bennett?
I agree. Those are only my comments. I agree. It's a significant amount of money, and Ms. Holding had really good points to say that the project has already started, so we're not holding anything up, and it is a lot of money that would benefit a lot of our students and families. So,
Ms. Haley?
And I just want one point of clarification. They're already getting the tax breaks from the Park District.
Oh, from
the
the Park
city?
District and the city, correct.
Park District passed it out, the city did.
Park District passed it and the city both passed it. Yep.
So they are already getting some breaks.
Correct.
I just want to mention, from an economic development standpoint, even though this project is already moving forward, we have to keep in mind that, economic development brings people into the community and also brings students to our district, as well as help with the tax burden. So just in the future or whatever, when we have these things coming to us, we have to make sure that, the school district isn't the body that's stopping economic development within our region. To me, I feel like the tax abatement is for the amount that's stated and how it's already structured. I don't see a problem with going forward with it. I guess I'm the only one. Oh, Mr. Schubert.
I would see no reason to put it on the agenda.
So we do not have a consensus to put it on the agenda.
The consensus is not to put it on the agenda.
Yeah. We do not.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next item. Item C, the facilities plan presentation. So next we will have our Chief Operation Officers, Mike Phillips, who will present a facilities master plan process review. Mr. Phillips.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. Prior to launching the new facilities master plan, we just wanted to provide the board with kind of another overview of what the process looks like. Just take one more turn through the overall process. So we can go to the next slide. So taking a look at what the purpose of a facilities master plan is. So it's a process that provides an opportunity to envision the future of teaching and learning within a school or district through an understanding of educational pedagogy's impact of facilities. Or another way to look at this is, how do the facilities negatively impact our educational pedagogies? I think the most important part of this is a facilities master planning process seeks to engage the broadest range of school administrator, teacher, student, parent, and community input possible. That's when where you have a good plan is when we have a broad number of perspectives and people feel like they have had an opportunity to provide good input into the plan. You can go to the next slide and skip this slide, Kim. So taking a look at the timeline, if you all recall back in July, the board approved DLR Group as our planning consultant. So through September into May, we'll have several opportunities for the board, the community, our teachers, students, and school administrators to engage in the process. And then in May 2024, we will present a recommendation of a 5-year facilities master plan to the board. From May 20, if the board approves, from May 24 through October 24, we would be designing year one construction projects. And from October 24 through February, bidding those year one projects. And then in June, after the school year, we'd launch year one construction projects. I just wanted to kind of go back and remind everybody why we kind of chose this timeline. So next summer, we'll be in the third year, or year 3 of the 3-year HVAC upgrade project. So we felt it was important to close that $160 million worth of projects, have an opportunity to plan what our next 5 years looks like, and then move into construction after all that work was done. We can go to the next slide. So just taking a kind of 10,000 foot view of what the schedule overview looks like. So phase 1 will be really data gathering and understanding. We'll be sending out a teacher survey. We'll have our first collab is what they're calling, or community meeting and listening session. Currently that's scheduled for Wednesday, 9/20 from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at West Middle School Auditorium. I'll be working with Mr. Dotson Jr. next week to get that advertised. Phase 2 will be focused on curriculum, understanding existing learning environments, and identifying where our opportunities and challenges exist. We'll hold collabs 2, 3, and 4. The planning consultant will lead us through developing some guiding principles. And at the end of this phase, we'll have a Board of Education update. In phase 3, we'll be taking all that information, aligning our data, creating summaries from the information learned, and collabs 1 through 4, or excuse me, from the information from collabs 1 through 4, and then we'll hold collab 5 in that phase, phase 3. Next slide, please. In phase 4, we'll start developing concepts and scenarios, high-level cost models, and create a phasing strategy. And at that time, we'll provide a Board of Education update as well as a community update. In phase 5, we'll refine those scenarios based off of board feedback from that update and community feedback. We'll provide final recommendations and a Board of Educational final presentation. And then phase 6 will be the final publication and implementation of the plan. You can go to the next slide. Wanted to talk a little bit about the steering committee and what the purpose. The purpose of the steering committee is to help the district develop the long-range facilities plan, including a prioritized list of recommended capital projects. And what does that work look like? Steering committees members will serve as a liaison to the broader Rockford Public Schools community. They'll review and discuss data, both subjective and objective. Review and discuss issues and opportunities identified in phase 1, provide feedback and refine guiding principles, goals, scenarios, and recommendation, develop decision-making tools to ensure projects are prioritized in an equitable manner, and then lastly, develop a prioritized list of recommended capital projects, which will be that final presentation to the board. Next slide. What does the makeup of the steering committee look like? So overall, we're seeking 20 people to be a part of this committee, 6 of which would be community stakeholders. And I've just added some examples of what that may look like. It could be Park District folks, DEI community partners, and parents. We're looking for 4 principals or teachers to sit on this, so it'll be a combination of a couple principals and a couple teachers. 6 administrative content experts, could be our curriculum, college and career readiness, district athletic director, fine arts, special programs, IT, and others. We're definitely looking for 2 students to be a part of this committee, one from our SSAC group and one DEI selection. And then lastly, typically you'd see 1 to 2 board members sit on a committee like this, but I just want to make sure everybody realizes this is optional. You don't have to sit on it. Committee meetings will begin in October after the phase 1 and phase 2 discovery sessions are complete. Next slide. talk a little bit about some other facilities master plan groups that are part of this process. First is our administrative core committee, and that's basically our superintendent and cabinet, and their purpose is to guide the process and schedule. Our facilities operation, IT, and security folks will provide input throughout the planning process. Our primary users, which are principals, teachers, staff, students, they will also provide input during our user group meetings throughout the year. And then lastly, our community members, and they will have opportunities to provide input during our community listening sessions. Next slide. I wanted to once again talk about the planning resources, what we'll be using to help inform some of our discussions and decisions. The facilities condition assessment that was completed in 2020, our building utilization analysis that was completed in 2020, our recently completed physical security and vulnerability audit, information that is provided by our demographer, which is also on the board agenda for discussion tonight. Things like our attendance boundary analysis and program analysis. And then we'll be seeking information from our principals, curricular staff on curricular and instructional needs, and our internal and external listening sessions. Next slide. Wanted to talk about funding sources. So this plan could be from $150 million to $160 to $190 million. 30 to 40 million would be funded from our corporate personal property replacement tax, 80 to 100 million from a reserve pledge, and then $50 million from general obligation bonds. We don't feel like we're going to have to go out for more bonds, but we may be able to restructure our current bonds to extend those and leverage some dollars there. Next slide. From a communication standpoint, working with Mr. Earl Dotson Jr. and the communication team to develop our communication plan, that will include our facilities master plan launch, advertising of our internal and external community listening sessions, facilities master plan development updates throughout the process, and lastly, the board approved plan. And then as we move forward through the 5 years, it's going to be important that we're providing updates to our board members and our community members through a website dashboard. And we always have our weekly superintendent board updates that we can provide additional information. Next slide. Lastly, the list of projects that are in front of you right now include capital requests that were submitted by principals over the past 5 years, or upgrades to assets that are at their end of their life cycle that were identified during our facilities condition assessment. The projects address student, staff, and visitor safety, athletic facility parity, and general facilities upkeep. I just kind of wanted to walk through these so everybody has like an idea of what we're talking about. So our Auburn Fieldhouse locker room build out, that actually was white boxed when we first constructed the Fieldhouse at Auburn. And when I say white box, the infrastructure, plumbing and HVAC, rough ends were included in the original project. Now this is just the next phase, actually building it out. So building out the showers, building out the locker room space, the changing space. That's what this project. And the reason we're bringing this forward is currently our PE students at Auburn are using the locker rooms down by the main gym, all the way at the other end of the building. So they're spending a lot of time changing, walking across the building to the field house for the PE activities, losing some time at the end of that to have to go back and get changed. So that has been, it's disruptive in the hallway, so this is an opportunity to address that. Our Auburn and Guilford, Swanson and Wyeth stadium renovations, basically what this is replacing all the bleacher seats in both stadiums. It will be addressing some upgrades to our press boxes, and then also some concrete work. That bleacher is a concrete structure and just needs some upgrades. It's been there for a long time and just needs some tender loving care. So that's what that project is. East and Jefferson, we're looking at building out field turf and rubberized track. A few years ago, we made an investment at Jefferson and installed an asphalt track, and we did regrade and seeded the football field. Basically, what this does is it really addresses our athletic parity, where we're providing field turf at both these high school locations, adding a rubberized surface to an already asphalt track at Jefferson, adding an asphalt track with rubberized surface at East. So our high school athletes at both these high schools have an opportunity to practice on what they would play on at both Swanson and Wyeth stadiums. It also provides an opportunity for our soccer and our JV teams to possibly hold games at this locations. We're not trying to replicate stadiums here, but we're trying to replicate practice facilities in some of our junior varsity athletics, as well as a varsity soccer game at these locations. At Summerdale, we're looking at replacing the parking lot and creating a new entrance exit off Glenwood Avenue. If people have been over there, right now we are entering that space basically off an alleyway. And it is a very unsafe situation for our students and families to just circle around that parking lot. So this will really create a safe environment for our families to drop their students off and leave. At Spring Creek, Welsh, and Westview, we'd be doing some hard surface playground replacement as well as sidewalk replacement. Also at Spring Creek, we'd be doing some gymnasium upgrades, replacing the flooring. That has some very challenging acoustical problems in that gym, and updating the lighting. I did want to remind the board that we recently replaced the gym floor at Barber, Ellis, and about a year, well, maybe 2 years ago, we replaced the gym floor at Lewis Lemon. So the upgrade at Spring Creek is definitely needed. And then lastly, a project here at the administration building, replacing, we are in dire need of starting to replace parking lots around the building. So we would start with the main parking lot here that sits at the building, and also doing some upgrades around the building itself. As Mr. Barthel has talked to us before, we have some water infiltration issues that get into our current server room, but also we have a number of storage areas down there. So this would address some of that water infiltration. And we are going to, if approved, have an opportunity to take down our blue BMO Harris signs, get rid of those ugly things, and possibly put up some new signage right on the building. We're looking at a total estimated cost for construction and design of $11.6 million for all these projects. I think this is a great investment in current facilities. You can go to the next slide, Kim. Just wanted, from an athletic facilities parity perspective, I wanted to kind of give you an idea of what our facility at East looks like with its track and football field compared to Swanson Stadium at Guilford. And that's the Swanson and Wyeth are very similar with their field turf and a rubberized track. So just to kind of give you the idea, the difference of what our high school athletes are working from. I also just wanted to mention that we'll be use reserve monies, if approved, to fund these projects. And just looking from a board's perspective, is there any opposition in moving forward with design, bidding, and construction of these projects outside of the facilities master plan? And I'll open it up for comments or questions.
Thank you. I just have a minor concern that, and so we have a very large district, and we have a district of many needs. And the feedback I'm receiving is we pour a lot of resources in athletics and things that is related to athletics, but not as much in art. So, for an example, I attended a play at West, and I had a tour at Kennedy, and the auditorium seats are the same seats that could have possibly been there since I was in school, which has been a while, to say the least. So it is a little concern, and it relates to the upgrades and at the administration building. You know, we're very comfortable and everything is updated, but some of our schools are really suffering with updates. And so how do you respond to the community in terms of how you prioritize where to put the funds where it relates to updates? And if we were disappointed with the CPPRT, so we're going to be using funding from that source as well as the reserve. And so we would need a little further explanation to the public for that as well.
Dr. Brown, do you mind touching on the finance piece?
Sure. So as we talked about a little bit, the corporate personal property replacement tax money has been fluctuating wildly, and we had some windfall amounts of money that we've received over the last couple of years. And so since that is one-time money and we expect it to go back from probably the 70 to 80 million we've got the last couple of years down to the 40 range, we felt like that was probably a good source of revenue to tap for the one-time stuff, because we knew we couldn't use it to pay salary and benefits and things like that were going to be a continuing expense. As far as the reserve pledge goes, you know, we'll be taking a look at that as we move through the project, but you know, ISB recommends that you have anywhere between 4 and 6 months worth of operating cash on hand. You know, we're well within those limits right now and feel like we could spend a little bit of that down. If we didn't want to spend that much down, then we would have the ability to go out and do some bonding for some projects too, similar to what was done when the 10-year plan was done, you know, a dozen years ago. So I think that was really the way we were looking at especially the CPPRT money, you know. We just don't want to spend one-time money on continuing things. So,
absolutely. Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions, Mr. Carpenter?
Thank you. So I was wondering what the time frame for those additional projects was, and it sounds like you would like to consider those separately from the facilities master plan.
Correct. So if the board had no opposition of us moving forward, I'd be bringing some design contracts to the October board meeting for approval. We'd move forward with design and then bidding, and the goal would be to construct these this summer of 2024.
Thank you. And so that I guess that was sort of related to the question about funding, and so because the funding for the additional projects is slightly different than the funding for the facilities master plan.
So we'd still be utilizing reserve funds to fund these projects, and that is also what we'd be utilizing for the facilities master plan projects. A portion.
Okay, so I guess that's a question. So the additional projects, the 11 million, would be from reserve funds. And anything else or not?
Yeah, it's reserve funds now, but it was CPPRT money that came in last year. So we set aside, you know, roughly $15.8 million of CPPRT money into the Fund 60, that capital project fund, for some kind of future projects. So that's what we did with a big chunk of the windfall. And then we put another large chunk of that money into the Health Life Safety Fund, Fund 90, to be able to continue the work on the 10-year life safety projects that Mike has been chipping away at too. So,
Mrs. Haley?
How were these particular projects determined and not something like?
Great question. So as I stated, these were projects that many of these have been submitted by our principals or athletic directors over the past 5 years. Others were identified during our facilities condition assessment from 2020. The majority of them have a life safety component to them. So when we're talking about hard surface playgrounds or sidewalks, when we're talking about our gym acoustics, and even here at the administration building. And I understand Board President Pearson's concern about spending money here, but we do have so many families that visit our building for enrollment and questions. It's really also an investment in our families that are here on a daily basis.
So these projects, will they move forward only after the listening sessions?
No, what we're asking is to move these forward outside of the facilities master plan process.
Any other questions?
And so are you,
Mr. Carpenter?
I'm sorry. So is you said did you say if we had consensus to do that, you would bring it forward in October for? So
if we had consensus to move forward, I'd be bringing some architectural and engineering design contracts forward in October for approval. And then from there, after design, we would be bidding those projects. So those would come back, once those projects are bid and we receive our bids, those would come to board for approval. You'd see what those bids came in at. Have another opportunity to approve at that point. If we approve the bids, then we'd move forward with construction.
One other issue that we looked at, in addition to the fact that these are many long-standing items over the last, kind of left over from the last facilities plan or the conditions assessment, but we also have a very robust $40+ million worth of air quality work that's going to be going on in our buildings this summer. And that was part of the reason that many of these projects are sort of based outdoors, because it wouldn't compete with the ability to complete those projects throughout our district. So there was another pragmatic reason that we thought this made sense to move forward on, because once 2025 hits, we would assume that the air quality and air conditioning projects will be completed, and we'll have sort of a blank slate of projects we can do. So focusing largely outdoors is helpful as well, or in buildings where the air conditioning work is already completed.
I guess this question doesn't really relate to this. I know that we're going to be doing some work over at the facility out by Jefferson High School. And I probably should know this, but do you know how much that work is going to cost?
So I can bring that forward at the next meeting. There's some cost there for some bathroom upgrades that we'll be doing, creating some ADA automotive program that RVC will be using. But much of the upgrades that the College and Career Education Center will be completed over a number of years. The roof still had a few years left before having to be replaced. The same with doors. The parking lot there is in need of being replaced, so that's something that we could see possibly investing some dollars in within the next year and a half. And if I remember correctly, that was about, I think we estimated between $1.2 and $1.5 million for that entire parking lot replacement.
Okay. I guess I just really would, and I'll work to find this out, to know what we're putting out in construction projects as a whole in the next 3 years, I guess.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments, Mr. Carpenter?
I just have another question, I guess. I assume that the other field houses have locker rooms that are already built out.
So the other field houses did not have locker rooms associated with them when they were built. This Auburn was the only field house that had locker rooms built. Guilford's locker rooms are really close to the field house. Jefferson did not have a field house, but their locker rooms are below basically the physical education area.
And East probably doesn't have a close locker room.
No, that's true. Yes, correct. That's Mr. Carpenter. Yes, where their gym and locker rooms are related to where the field house is.
Are there any board members that are opposed to bring this forth to the October meeting?
I am. The extra outside of the facility plan.
Okay. So we have a consensus to bring this forward to the October board meeting. Anything else, Mr. Phillips?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will now review, have a preview of our consent items. Letter A is RFQ 24-02, demographer services. As a part of the upcoming facilities master plan, the district needs to partner with the demographer to provide services that include but are not limited to SY 2023-2024 enrollment analysis, review of the 2020 building utilization analysis, and recommendation revisions, and a thorough analysis of current district and elementary, middle, and high school capacity, with recommendations for future growth decline based on expected enrollment projections. Flow Analytics will work with the district personnel to provide boundary scenarios if necessary. Item B, merchant agreement with Common Market Local Food Procurement. The Common Market is a nonprofit regional food distributor on a mission to connect urban communities with local food from sustainable family farms. They do this by selling fresh, healthy food to community institutions, creating a supply chain for farmers and ranchers who are at the forefront of creating an equitable and resilient food system, providing avenues for values-aligned wholesale food procurement, guiding our partners to see the full value of the food and its impact on the health of their people, community, and environment. They strive to provide food security, farm viability, and community and ecological health across the country. Item C, the Boys and Girls Club Amendment, ARP-ESSER. With ARP-ESSER planning, Illinois P20, Council has given schools recommendation on how to best utilize their funding to support students. Specifically, the funding devoted to learning loss, as defined by the United States Department of Education, is designed to target students' academic and socio-emotional needs by expanding the day and/or year. A community call to action was sent out January 15th, requesting community organizations to develop proposals to help support our students. Thank you. This concludes the report.
I have a question regarding the demographer. So just for clarity and understanding, do you foresee the zones changing? And
there is a possibility that we could do some population balancing, enrollment balancing, but that would all be driven by decisions made during the facilities master plan and Flow Analytics review boundary analysis that they're going to complete as part of this work.
Okay, thank you.
Board President Pearson, I would just like to say that they will create scenarios, what boundary scenarios that we'll have an opportunity to review and comment on.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I have a question about the same item. So has RPS previously contracted with a demographer? If so, when was that?
Yes, so we have, since the last facilities master plan, had been contracted with RSP Associates. They have completed our annual enrollment analysis over the last 10 years at least. They've also, RSP Associates also developed our web map that we utilize currently. So this is a service that we've contracted for a number of years. We just felt it was an opportunity to go out for a request for qualifications to see what other demographer firms were out there. and have an opportunity for a cross-departmental team to review submissions and decide if we wanted to move forward with a new demographer.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a question about C for Boys and Girls Club amendment. Oh, I was like waiting for someone to see who I directed towards. Okay, so I have questions, I guess, kind of about the timeline. So a lot of the information in here, for example, is that the agreement was started November 16th, 2022, but then another date says June 14th of 2022. So can you just help me? Sure. Thank you.
So this is an existing agreement that we already have. The contract started, the first agreement, there are two different amendments on here. The first amendment for the academic success program went through, I believe, June 2022, which is the one you're referring to. And the success through targeted outreach mentor went through later. So there's two separate amendments for two separate agreements. What I'm asking, or what the Boys and Girls Club has asked
C, D are proposed policies changed arising out of Faith's Law. Faith's Law is named after a child sexual abuse survivor. The law includes definition of sexual misconduct and grooming. Its focus is on the prevention of sexual misconduct by school employees, substitutes, and contractors. The Act requires districts to review a prospective employee's employment history. The Act requires notice to be given to students who have been victims of sexual misconduct and their parents, as well as the State Superintendent of Education and the applicable regional superintendent of schools. Policy 4.6 is updated in response to Faith's Law, requiring districts to initiate an employment history review of contractor employees who will have direct contact with children or students. Similarly, Policy 5.30 is updated in response to Faith's Law, requiring districts to initiate an employment history review prior to hiring district applicants who will have direct contact with children or students. Policy 5.9 is updated in response to Faith's Law, requiring districts to develop procedures to notify the parents or guardians of a student with whom a district employee, agent, or contractor is alleged to have engaged in sexual misconduct. Additionally, the policy is revised to reflect the mandate that superintendents notify the State Superintendent of Education and applicable regional superintendent when there is reasonable cause to believe a license holder committed sexual misconduct. Policy 5.150 is being revised to reflect the prohibition against the district providing a recommendation of employment for an employee, contract, or agent that district knows or has probable cause to believe has engaged in sexual misconduct with a student or minor. The policy is also updated to detail the district is required to maintain employment history review information. Policy 5.25 is updated to remove outdated references such as MySpace and BlackBerry to further clarify appropriate use of personal technology and social media. Policy 6.50 includes proposed revisions in response to state law requiring districts to implement a food sharing plan for unused food to combat potential food insecurity to the community. The proposed revision to policy 6.135 are recommended to be in accord with state law requiring that by no later than the beginning of 2023 to 2024 school year, district accelerated placement policies allow for students automatic enrollment in the following school term into the next rigorous level of advanced coursework offered by the high school if the student meets or exceeds state standards in language, arts, math, or science. The Illinois State Board of Education clarifies that having a policy in place by beginning of the 2023-2024 school year means districts should use scores from 2023 to 2024 school year to automatically enroll students during 2024 to 2025 school year. Policy 7.80 is updated to allow students to be excused from school for religious reasons and religious instructions as permitted in the school code. Policy 7.165 is updated in response to Jet Hawkins' law, which prevents school boards from creating hairstyle-based dress code requirements. This update also aligns with Board 7.160 student appearance, which the board considered in May of this year. Policy 7.250 is updated in response to state law requires districts to appoint a liaison to DCFS. This policy is also revised in response to Aaron's law, which requires districts to ensure identification of counseling options for students who are affected by sexual abuse and grooming behaviors, along with district and community-based options for victims of sexual abuse and grooming behaviors to obtain assistance and intervention. The phrase grooming behaviors is added to align with Aaron's law. Policy 7.260 is updated in accordance with the state law, which requires a student be allowed to be exempt from physical activity during a period of religious fasting with parent and or guardian notice in writing. The policy is also updated to clarify the board is prohibited from honoring parental excuses based on a student's participation in athletic training activities or competitions conducted outside of the auspices of this school district. Policy 7.265 is updated in response to update the Department of Public Health powers and duties law regarding concussion procedure. Schools are required to distribute the article, the Illinois Department of Public Health concussion procedure to any student or parent guardian of student who may have sustained concussion. Policy 7.290 is updated in response to state law, which requires the district suicide and depression awareness and prevention program to include methods of intervention for students identified as being at increased risk of suicide. This policy is also updated in response to state law requiring districts to include support information on student ID cards, the district's website, the student's handbook, and planner. Item 10N is proposed change to the board meeting calendar. The January meetings are being moved ahead by 1 week because the winter break extends into January 5th, 2024. So the committee of the whole meeting would be on January 9th, 2024, and regular board meeting will be held on January 23rd, 2024. Are there any questions for the governance consent items? If not, these items will return for a vote on September 19, 2023, regular board meeting.
I have a few questions.
Sure. Mrs. Bennett?
Okay, on policy 5.30, so 9B. On page 4 of 5, the red area or redlined area specifically says direct contact with children or students. Does anybody have a definition of what direct contact means?
Yes, typically it's understood to be direct daily contact with a student. So for example, if you have a contractor who's coming in for a week-long project that's in the back of the building in the, janitorial closet, they would not have direct daily contact. However, if you had an ongoing project that was maybe 6 months long with construction workers that might be interacting with students each and every day, that might be questionable, but typically we are looking at supervisory contact, like paraprofessionals, teachers, support staff.
Okay, so, but in theory, couldn't there be times that students would be in the hallway or be in spaces that they could interact with individuals?
When HR is making a determination and looking at an employment, a potential applicant or vendor's criminal background, we do kind of assess what kind of contact may be involved. So we are looking for typically that direct daily contact with potentially unsupervised contact with that student. So for example, if we had a maintenance worker that were outside and typically they would not be in the student's presence absent a teacher or someone guiding the students up and down the hall, that would not be the direct daily contact that we are looking for.
Okay, thank you. On policy 5.9, so letter C, on page 3, the upper portion, it says the superintendent shall develop procedures for notifying a student's parent guardian. Do we know what those procedures are?
We do have a simple procedure that we would finalize after the board approves the policy change. We do have sample procedures that involve age developmentally appropriate notification to the student and notification to the parent. And it also involves our non-discrimination coordinator working together with those who would receive such complaints or reports.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then, okay, I think that's my last question on that one. Okay, 7.165, So letter I. Oh, nope, the next one, sorry. Letter J, 7.250. Okay, so regarding Aaron's Law, counseling options, assistance, and intervention, when it's saying each school building identifies counseling options, are those ones that identifies as in the building would make the referral, or resources would be inside the building, they would be paid resources, free resources?
I believe the policy contemplates student services creating a body of options that would be available for every school in the district. So it wouldn't be each school identifying solely for themselves. There may be some that are unique to a specific location if they have additional resources available in that area, but typically it would be student services working together to identify a body of options for all of the schools.
Okay, so it just how it's written right now says ensure that each school building identifies counseling options? So, but you're saying it wouldn't be each school building, it would be them as a collective to identify them?
Well, typically the way our student services serves the entire district, they would be there to assist each and every school building in compiling a list of resources that are available. To the extent that a school becomes aware of a resource, one example I can think of is, for example, Auburn has some nearby community resources that maybe Jefferson wouldn't have access to. So that might be on their list, but not Jefferson's.
I can add a little bit to that. We have developed a crisis management team at the district level that's revising our crisis manual. And we have a liaison from the city who's assisting us with finding all of the resources across our Winnebago County. Do you have anything else to add?
No, you got it.
That's great. You guys can share it. It's right in between you. It'll be okay. Take turns. That's what I tell my daughter. We have to all take turns. Okay, my last one is 7.290, which is letter M. Okay, so on the first page it says, number 3 says methods of intervention including procedures that address any emotional or mental health safety plan for use during the school day. And then it's saying all of these different line items or letters. What is my question? Kind of how are these going to be determined, identified, recorded, kept track of? Kind of any of those questions.
You don't want it this time? Can you ask that again, the question again?
Yeah, so it's saying that basically that this would apply to individuals in any of these categories. So A, B, C, D, all of these. So are these ones that children have to self-identify? Are these ones that are like, some of this could be a diagnosis that's in an IEP, for example, right? So we would have record of that. But some of these are ones that would be very sensitive that maybe a child wouldn't disclose. So kind of how, or if they disclose it to one individual, kind of how is that records kept of that, tracked, all of that?
Sure, that's kept through our MTSS process. And we have some ways of putting things in Panorama that are discrete, as well as the safety plans. Those are shared with the school administrators and are part of the student's record, temporary record.
Okay, so say if a student had a mental health concern and they were inpatient and hospitalized, so once upon discharge, then school would be notified and then?
Yes, we receive paperwork from the sending hospital to us, discharge papers that give a treatment plan that we will then develop a plan based upon the needs within the school building. But we also created new posters. You'll probably see them if you're out in the schools. They look like a big cell phone. And we've added some information with sexual abuse, dating, and things like that. So we've upgraded those this year too.
Okay. Okay, then my last question, on page 2 at the bottom, information to staff, parents, guardians, and students. Superintendent shall inform each school district employee about this policy and ensure its posting on the district website. But my question is about the student ID card. So it says Student identification cards, district website, student handbooks, planners will contain support information. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
That's already in place. The information required on the student IDs was implemented, I believe, last school year, and the policy is now being caught up because of some additional changes that we looked at earlier in the policy that you actually discussed already. But the hotline information on the IDs was implemented last school year.
Okay, and what hotline? DCFS hotline or sexual assault
There's a very
hotline?
specific number. It is not DCFS.
We have the Illinois Safe to Schools. We also have the text line, and then Let's Talk. So we have a QR code that the student can scan. We have them in the bathrooms as well. So if a student doesn't want to scan that in the hallway, they have some privacy to do so, and then they can do either a reported Let's Talk or an anonymous.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple. On policy 7.80, where it relates to students may be excused for religious reasons, will there be any documentation required?
Typically, when a parent would call in and request that a student be excused for any reason, there's not always documentation required. It depends on, I believe, the number of absences that they have. So, for example, if a parent were to call in and say, my student is ill today, we don't necessarily require documentation for each and every instance. I do believe there's a duration of time that may trigger a request for documentation. Is that correct, Morgan? So if they were asking for 1 day off as an excused absence, I don't believe that they would be requiring or requesting any documentation, but I do believe, okay.
Yeah, that's correct. No, there wouldn't be any documentation that would be required if it's for a religious exemption.
Okay, so, and this kind of coincide with the policy that mentioned about fasting and physical activity. So say for religious reasons, a parent call in and say, we're fasting for 3 days for religious reasons, and my child will not be in school. That's sufficient.
I would want to double check that because I'm not familiar with any religious observation that would include like 3 consecutive days of missed school that included fasting or not. So I know like Ms. Goldsmith said there isn't a requirement if it's just 1 day that is taken off. However, when it gets to be more than 1 day, I don't remember offhand what that threshold is. So we'd have to get back to you on that.
One good rule of thumb is that the state does provide 5 mental health days that can be observed. So that provides families with some flexibility as well. But so 5 I know is for sure a number that would lead to some documentation needing to be provided.
Okay. So just for, should it be more specific in the policy where it relates to being able to miss for religious reasons? This is.
There are so many different religions, and so I think generally our administrators take it at face value. If there's questions about it, they may family for additional information. Similar to individuals who ask for a vaccine exemption, we do request some very specific information to see if it qualifies. But for an absence due to religious observation, we've not experienced any issues with that. We have reminded administrators on occasion and given them the list of primary holidays for a lot of the major religions, but there's so many out there that I don't know that it makes sense to put something specific.
Thank you. Ms. Vice President.
Just want to keep in mind with the new attendance policy regarding the special programs. So if a student is allowed 5 mental health days, and they take it consecutively, will that will that bar them from being removed from the program?
I would just, one thing that we are going to do before anything is implemented with the program is we're going to ensure that we have a group led by Ms. Lawrence, Dr. Reed, and some other individuals to ensure that we don't have any unintended consequences. So those will, I think there's more to come before any child is removed from that program, for a program, because that is certainly not our intent. Our intent is to maximize attendance, not to remove children. So what we'll be doing is reviewing that and ensuring that there aren't unintended consequences, and probably having some kind of a review panel in place to ensure that progressive support was provided to families, that children weren't penalized for illnesses, et cetera. So more to come on that front. Ms. McCall, I think there's been a great deal of community conversation since that policy, or not policy, excuse me, administrative procedure was discussed. And I think there's more work that needs to be done to ensure that we administer that properly and with equity in mind.
Thank you.
For that specific policy, it also says that student's parent or guardian must give written notice at least 5 calendar days before the absence.
Correct. You gave me time to look it up. I looked at the statute, and it does say school board may require the parent or guardian of a child who is to be excused from attending because of religious reasons to give notice not exceeding 5 days.
Mm-hmm. Very good. There was another question. In regards to policy 6.50, includes proposed revision in response to state law requiring district to implement a food sharing plan for unused food to combat potential insecurity to the community. So is this to be understood, for the sake of public knowledge, is this to be understood as food being left over and donating it, or reusing it? And are you concerned about infections like Salmonella, Shigella, those type of?
Ms. Kohler is here, our ED of Nutrition Services. She can help answer that question.
Thank you.
Good evening. So basically, the new policy requires that we have a food sharing plan and an unused food sharing plan. Essentially, if we get into the details of it, we do everything behind the scenes with our new Titan software and our production records and our planning to ensure that we are reducing the amount of waste that we have behind, like back of house is what we call it. So if we do have any waste, our policy is that we will throw that away because we cannot safely cool things down in the time that is required by the health department in order to safely serve it again. If it is items that are like prepackaged, like graham crackers or cupped fruit or juice boxes, things that are unopened, we put those back in our inventory and use it the next time it's on the menu. And we're talking waste in terms of once it leaves our line. So if it goes on a student's tray and then they are deciding they don't want to eat that item anymore, we do encourage them to take that home with them. So if it's a bag of graham crackers or something that is non-perishable or more shelf stable, they can certainly take that home with them for a snack later or, you know, on the bus, whatever. However, we do not have a place for students to put their leftover food for other students to take for exact reasons you're talking about, food safety, student allergies, there's cross-contamination potential. So our policy is that we do everything on the back end to ensure we have as little food waste as possible. We reuse the foods that are prepackaged, and then when it comes to what students decide to eat or not eat, we do not share amongst students for food safety reasons.
Thank you very much for
Of course.
explaining that in detail.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Can I follow up on that?
Oh, there's a follow-up question.
So, thank you. So is this policy change requires there to be an unused food sharing plan implemented, but it sounds like there is basically an unused food sharing plan already.
So yeah, this was just an update to the policy, although in any food service industry, you're going to kind of already have a plan established. So this is just an updated board policy. We already had one in place.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you. If not, the preview consent item. Meeting minutes, fee waiver, YWCA Northern Illinois, Literacy Council, ESLA, adult education classes, notice of public hearing, E-Plan, memorandum of understanding, EOPA, bilingual translator, parent initiative, parent professional educators, IGA property tax refund program, freedom of information law. Do anyone have any questions or comments for 10A through F? Mr. Carpenter?
Yeah, I guess we were talking about new construction, so the property tax refund program, can we get an explanation of that, please?
I'll start with a high-level overview, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Brown to provide some of the details. But in part, this is one the administration is providing a recommendation. We feel that it is important to increase available housing in our community and to grow our equalized assessed value. So I think there are two interests that are served by making this investment in expanding residential housing. Post 2008, with when the housing market crashed, we've seen very, very little in terms of new construction, and that creates a positive for the school district in the sense that our equalized assessed value over time has increased, but it can create a negative for our school district in that there's some increased housing insecurity in our community and at times a challenge to find available affordable housing. So across the board here, this allows the creation of new housing stock and incentivizes it. We've seen with inflationary pressures, that's very difficult in our current environment to do that without some incentive. And so the idea of the other taxing bodies and the school that mentioned here, including the city and the park district and the county coming together to make building new homes attractive and affordable for both developers, but also for the beneficiaries of those is something that we think is going to grow EAV and provide high quality housing and hopefully be a part of our community growing and thriving. Dr. Brown, anything you would want to add?
No, nothing to add.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. One moment. Mr. Carpenter, will you finish?
Oh, I was just going to ask, or I'm trying to read what the value and the incentive, how many, is there a limit, or what are the incentives exactly?
So there's an estimate shown there of if there would be 20 single-family homes built during that time period and 32 family properties built during that time period. And then over to the right where it shows the potential for a refund, you can see in total there, it's over a 3-year period of time could be a total of $903,817 if you look all the way over and all the way down. And the school district's portion of that would be about $500,000 if in fact all these properties were actually built.
I think one thing we would highlight with this proposal, Mr. Carpenter, and to the rest of the board as well, is that I don't know that in 10 years we've been anywhere near 50 homes ever being built. It's probably been 2006 or 2007 where we've approached numbers like that. It's typically closer to 10 that are built within the footprint of the city of Rockford. There just has not been a lot of housing built. So we're in partnership with the city and some other taxing bodies. We thought this might allow us to get some new housing stock. We're 10 years plus with very little new housing stock added. So we thought it was worth trying, and we would, this would be a pretty short-term attempt at something we could revisit. If it was wildly successful, we could consider continuing to do it, or if it was not successful at all, we could look at other possibilities.
I'm sorry, if I could just ask one more on that. Is there a maximum housing, the value of the house? Is there a limit on, we're talking about housing insecurity, so I'm wondering if it matters whether it's a $100,000, $150,000 house or a $500,000 house.
No, there is no limits placed on max value.
Yeah, I think we're also trying to grow, the other function is we're trying to stimulate any housing growth in the community as well. So at this point, the recommendation, when we worked with the other taxing bodies as well as developers and realtors, they felt putting a limit in place would be counterproductive. We've done that before where we sort of put a lot of limits and it wasn't successful. So this is an attempt to sort of simplify the policy so it's easier to communicate to developers and hopefully stimulate growth in a hopefully more efficient manner.
Mrs. Bennett?
Have the other, on the attachment, the other taxing bodies agreed to this already? Are we the last one to?
I think Rockford just approved it minutes ago. Yeah, I think we're moving forward on a similar path. We've had multiple meetings with those entities, and I think there's a shared commitment, but the city was definitely going to take the lead on it first.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the update.
Mrs.
I just need clarification. With this rebate, this is money that will be given back? Correct. Okay, that's all I want to know.
Anyone else? So I just have a statement where it relates to the growth of our city. So there's other contributing factors that will attract individuals to our city. So when individuals are relocating, they look at the academic achievement, the school district, and the crime rate. And so given that fact, when making a decision to move to Rockford, if those numbers are not positive for potential residents, they overlook Rockford. So just keep that in mind when we are considering supporting things one way or the other. It is not there's other factors that will attract residents to Rockford or not. Vice President?
I just wanted to expound on that as well. You know, it's a community effort. Housing is a #1 factor or lack thereof, you know, so in attracting different businesses and attracting different talents to come to the community, we have to keep in mind we have to have somewhere for them to live or they will pass on. So that's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? So there are no public speakers. Are there any further comments or agenda recommendations by the board? Before we make a motion, I would like to, if you haven't already responded to Mrs. Fromm regarding the board retreat or board evaluation with team building, there was a suggestion or recommendation, and it was my attempt to get it expedited. So we really need to get, if you haven't already, make sure that you respond to Laura. She provided a couple of dates, and so to get this expedited, we really need that response so we can let our field representative confirm with her. This will be, again, an opportunity for us to meet the field representative from Illinois Association School Board and, ask all the it's a wealth of information that could be presented and opportunity. Mrs. Holy, do you have?
A split on half the board members were available on the October 6th date and half were at the end of October. So I think we need an alternative now, maybe a Tuesday evening, if that would work best for board members, or at the November and December get pretty rough.
Okay, so I think that it is worth having a discussion in terms of the Tuesday. I am in support of a Tuesday because it's important that we make this happen. It's vital information. It's an opportunity for us to evaluate where we are and, where do we go from here and get a better understanding of the association itself. So I'm interested in hearing some feedback in regards to a Tuesday.
Do we know if the Tuesday would be in October? Yeah. Okay, so I am in support of a Tuesday. I would really like us to be able to get together sooner rather than later, so I'm in support of a Tuesday.
I think we need to, send out a doodle poll or something. At this point, I don't have all my calendars with me this evening, just to make sure that we're able to make an informed decision regarding an alternative date.
Can I gave a date, but it wasn't that I was not available on the other date. It was just my preference. So I don't know if everybody else was. Okay.
It would have been a split either way.
I'll send out an email tomorrow and ask poll, and just all I ask is please do not reply all.
Please. So let me just say this. This is something that's needed. I can't stress that enough. And it's 7 of us, and at least 2 of us. It may not ever be a good day. However, it must and will have to happen. That is imperative for the health of our board. Okay? Anything else? If not, I make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Can I get a second? Thank you.